Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. My name is Ethan Doe, and today I will be reading Cakkavattisihananda Sutta, the lion's roar on the turning of the wheel. Thus I have heard. Once the Lord was staying among the Magadhans at Matula. Then he said, "Monks." "Lord," they replied. And the Lord said, "Monks, be islands unto yourselves, be a refuge unto yourselves, with no other refuge." And how does a monk dwell on an island unto himself, as a refuge unto himself, with no other refuge, with Dhamma as his island, with the Dhamma as his refuge, with no other refuge? Here, a monk abides contemplating body as body, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. He abides contemplating feelings as feelings, mind as mind objects as mind objects, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. Keep to your own preserves, monks, to your ancestral haunts. If you do find so, then Mara will find no lodgment, no foothold. It is just by building up of this wholesome state that this merit increases. Once, monks, there was a wheel-turning monarch named Dalahanami, a righteous monarch of the law, conqueror of the four quarters, who had established the security of his realm, and was possessed of the seven treasures. These are the wheel treasure, the elephant treasure, the horse treasure, the jewel treasure, the female treasure, the householder treasure, and seventh, the treasure of advisors. He has more than 1,000 sons who are heroes of heroic stature, conquerors of the hostile army. He dwells having conquered this sea-girt land without stick or sword by the law. And after many hundreds and thousands of years, King Dalahami said to a certain man, "My good man, whenever you see the sacred wheel treasure has slipped from its position, report it to me." "Yes, sire," the man replied. And after many hundreds and thousands of years, the man saw that the sacred wheel treasure had slipped from its position. Seeing this, he reported the fact to the king. Then King Dalahami sent for his eldest son, the crown prince, and said, "My son, the sacred wheel treasure has slipped from its position." Then I have heard to say that when this happens to a wheel-turning monarch, he has not much longer to live. I have had my fill of human pleasures. Now it is the time to seek heavenly pleasures. You, my son, take over control of this ocean-bounded land. I will shave off my hair and beard, don yellow robes, and go forth from the household life into homelessness. And having installed his eldest son in due form as king, King Dalahani shaved off his hair and beard, donned yellow robes, and went forth the household life into homelessness. And 7 days after the royal sage had gone forth, the sacred wheel treasure had vanished. Then a certain man came into the anointed Katiya king and said, "Sire, you should know that the sacred wheel treasure has disappeared." At this moment, the king was grieved and felt sad. He went to the royal sage and told him the news. And the royal sage said to him, "My son, you should not grieve or feel the sad at the disappearance of the wheel treasure. The wheel treasure is not an heirloom from your fathers. But now, my son, you must turn yourself into an Aryan wheel turner. And then it may come about that, if you perform the duties of our Aryan wheel-turning monarch. On the last day of the 15th, when you have washed your head and gone up to the Vernada on top of the palace for the first day, the sacred wheel treasure will appear to you, thousands spoke, and complete with fellow, hub, and all accessories. But what, sire? is the duty of an Arahan wheel-turning monarch. It is this, my son, yourself depending on the Dhamma, honoring it, revering it, cherishing it, doing homage to it, and venerating for it. Having the Dhamma as your badge and banner, acknowledging the Dhamma as your master, you should establish guard, ward, and protection according to the Dhamma for your own household, your own troops, your nobles and vassals, for Brahmins and householders, town and country folk, ascetics and Brahmins, for beasts and birds. Let no crime prevail in your kingdom, and to those who are in need give property. And what ascetics and Brahmins in your kingdom have renounced the life of sensual flirtation and are devoted to forbearance and gentleness, each one tamping himself and cleaning and calming himself, and each one striving for the end of craving. If from time to time they should come to you and consult you as what is wholesome and unwholesome, what is blameworthy and what is blameless, what is to be followed and what is not to be followed, and what action will in the long run lead to harm and sorrow, and them to avoid evil and do what is good. That, my son, is the duty of an Aryan monarch. Yes, sire, said the king. Then he performed the duties of an Aryan wheel-turning monarch. Andas he did so on the fast day of the 15th, and when he had washed his head and gone up to the Vernada on top of his palace for the fast day, the sacred wheel treasure appeared to him. Thousands spoke, complete with fellow, hub, and all accessories. Then the king thought, I have heard that when a duly anointed Katya king sees such a wheel on the fast day of the 15th, he will become a wheel-turning monarch. May I become such a monarch. Then rising from his seat, covering one shoulder with his robe, the king took a gold vessel in his left hand, sprinkled the wheel with his right hand, and said, May the noble wheel treasure turn. May the noble wheel treasure conquer. The wheel treasure turned to the east, and the king followed it with his fourfold army. And whatever country the wheel stopped, the king took up residence with his fourfold army. And those who opposed him in the eastern region came and said, Come, your majesty, welcome. We are yours, your majesty. Rule us, your majesty. And the king said, Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drink. Be moderate in eating. And those who have opposed him in the eastern region became his subjects. Then the wheel turned south, west, and north, each time resulting in like manner. Then the wheel treasure, having conquered the lands from sea to sea, returned to the royal capital and stopped before the king's palace as he was trying a case, as if he to adorn the royal palace. And a second wheel-turning monarch did likewise, and a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh king also. So the man to see of a wheel that has slipped from his position, and as in 7 days after the royal sage had gone forth, the wheel disappeared. Then a man came to the king and said, Sire, you should know that the sacred wheel treasure has disappeared. At this time, the king was grieved and felt sad, but he did not go to the royal sage and ask him about the duties of a wheel-turning monarch. Instead, he ruled the people according to his own ideas, and being so rules, the people did not prosper so well as they had done under the previous king, who had performed the duties of a wheel-turning monarch. Then the ministers, counselors, treasury officials, guards and doorkeepers, and the chanters of mantras came to the king and said, Sire, as long as you rule the people accordingly to your own ideas and differently from the way they were ruled under previous wheel-turning monarchs, the people do not prosper so well. Sire, there are ministers in your realm, including yourself, who have persevered the knowledge of how a wheel-turning king should rule. Ask us, your majesty, and we will tell you. Then the king ordered all the ministers and all the others to come together, and he consulted them. And they explained to him the duties of a wheel-turning monarch. And having listened to them, the king established guard and protection. But he did not give property to the needy, and as a result, poverty became rife. With the spread of poverty, a man took what was not given, thus committing what was called theft. They arrested him and brought him up before the king, saying, Your Majesty, this man took what was not given, which we call theft. The king said to him, Is it true that you took what was not given, which is called theft? It is, your majesty. Why? Your majesty, I have nothing to live on. Then the king gave him some property, saying, With this, my good man, you can keep yourself, support your mother and father, keep a wife and children, carry on business, and make gifts to ascetics and Brahmins, which will promote your spiritual welfare and lead to a happy rebirth with a pleasant result in a heavenly sphere. Very good, your majesty, replied the man, and the exact same thing happened with another man. Then people heard that king was giving away property to those who looked what was not given, and they thought, Suppose we were to do likewise. And then another man took what was not given, and they brought him before the king. The king asked him, Why had he done this? And he replied, Your majesty, I have nothing to live on. Then the king thought, If I give property to everyone who takes what is not given, this theft will increase more and more. I'd better make an end of him, finish him off once for all, and cut his head. So he commanded his men, bind this man's arms tightly behind him with a strong rope, shave his head closely, and lead him to the rough sound of a drum through the streets and squares out through the southern gate, and there finish by inflicting the capital penalty and cutting off his head. And they did so. Hearing about this, the people thought, Now let us get sharp swords made for us, and then we can take from anybody what is not given, which is called theft. Then we will make an end of them, finish them once and for all, and cut off their heads. So having procured from some sharp swords, they launched murderous assaults on villages, towns, and cities, and went in for highway robbery, killing their victims by cutting off their heads. Thus, from not giving property to the needy, poverty became rife. From the growth of poverty, what was taken of what was not given increased. From the increase of theft, the use of weapons increased. From the increased use of weapons, the taking of life increased. And from the taking of life increased in people's life, span decreased, their beauty decreased. And as a result of this decrease of lifespan and beauty, the children of those whose lifespan had been 80,000 years lived only 40,000. And a man of a generation that lived 40,000 years took what was not given. He brought before the king, and who asked him, It is true that you took what is not given, what is called theft. No, your majesty, he lied. Thus, from the not giving of property to the needy, the taking of life increased, and from the taking of life, lying increased. From the increase in lying, people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased. And as a result, the children of those whose lifespan has been 40,000 years lived only 20,000. And a man of a generation that lives for 20,000 years took what was not given. Another man denounced to him, saying the king, Sire, such and such a man has taken what was not given. Thus, from the not giving of property to the needy, the speaking evil of others increased, and as a consequence, people's lifespan decreased, and their beauty decreased. And as a result, the children of those whose lifespan who has only been living for 20,000 years had lived only for 10,000. And of the generation that had lived for 10,000 years, some were beautiful, some were ugly, and those who were ugly, being envious of those who were beautiful, committed adultery with others' wives. Thus, from the not giving of property to the needy, sexual misconduct increased, and as in a consequence, people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased, and as a result, the life of those lifespan had been 10,000 years, only lived 5,000. And among the Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni